James. Thanks so much for joining the show today.
Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, and to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in design?
Yeah, I've been working in the industry for 18 years now. The last 4 years, I was running design over at Crunchyroll. You may know them as the world's largest dedicated anime streaming library. Before that, I used to work in the women's subscription box space. So the way I talk about it is instead of selling drugs on the street, I was selling women's products on the internet at a quarterly cadence. I've worked at Live Nation, I've worked at Disney, tons of startups in between. And I don't know, I feel like even though I've learned a lot about a long career, there's still so much to learn in terms of like understanding the business of design, the value of it, how to communicate the value. And I don't know, I guess that's how you and I got connected.
Yeah, no, I think you have great takes on the business of design, which, a lot of leaders on the show talk about the business of design, but I think the reason I was interested in talking to you is there you have a lot more depth behind it and talk about the political side, which is interesting to me. I think let's start with that because I think acknowledging that so much of what goes on at these big companies that everyone's trying to work for or works for is politics. How do you tell designers to navigate that, or how do you help them navigate that?
Yeah, I think the first thought that comes to mind is this quote from Plato, and I might butcher a little bit, but I'm going to give it a shot, which is, if you abstain from politics, you are destined to be governed by your inferiors, right? And so the first harsh truth and harsh reality is that like so many designers and designers think, well, they have this idea of like how they want the world to be. They're like, oh yeah, I'll just go to a place and they'll like put me in the corner and they give me the creative problems and I solve them and everyone loves it. And there's the way that you want the world to be and the way that the world actually fucking is. And
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, like, corporate is absolutely a performance. That's why whenever you get evaluated, they call it a performance review, right? And so that performance is understanding who the decision makers are, who are in power, what they want, and how to communicate with them. And so this is what they call org politics. And so many people are like, I don't deal with politics. I don't want to deal with, I just want to do design things. And I'm like, my friend, the difference between dealing with politics and not dealing with politics is having a conversation like, what are the benefits of eating a shit sandwich? And here's your shit sandwich. Go ahead and take a bite, Alex.
Tell me about like doing a power audit. I think that was like a useful tool that people could employ.
Yeah, yeah. So this is from the last time we were chatting. I have this framework that I call the power audit. And the power audit is essentially, so you remember back in high school, you kind of had this mental model of like every kid in the school. It's like who's
Yeah.
cool, who the jocks were, who they were friends with, who's popular, who's dating who, all the scandalous stuff. And then like, kind of like, I guess the political, what would you call it? Like street credibility of everybody.
Right.
The same thing exists in the workplace. I call this it's technically the org chart, right? But like what the thing that the org chart never reveals is like what type of communication style everybody is and who actually is the decision maker. Because there are people who are really high up in an organization who have very little power and also are useless. And it's really important. Like I've been there myself. I've worked at tons of these big organizations where I've reported into the VP of whatever or the SVP of whatever, and I was like, these people are fucking dumb, and they don't know what
Yeah.
the fuck they're doing.
100%. Yeah, I think there's you're speaking truth, man. I mean, there's a lot of politics, right? And it's people fighting for power, and it's like the Hunger Games. So I think it's refreshing to have you on because honestly, I see the same shit, right? Like there's people, there's egos, and I think I I empathize with designers that don't want to play that game
Right.
because it is gross at some point, right? Like, but the reality is, I think, how does playing that game help get your design seen or like move you up the ladder as a designer? Like, how does that help the design org?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll answer that, and then I'll come back to the kind of the Hunger Games aspect of it. So basically there are kind of two paths where if you are any kind of creative and you're any like kind of creative contributor, you can either hope for the results you want or you can intentionally set up the board to optimize your surface area for, like some people call it optimizing, like increasing your surface area for luck, but really it's just about having enough consistency and controlling enough variables for things to go the way you want them to go. And so the first aspect of it is like one, business acumen. And this is something no one ever teaches in design school. Like I certainly never learned it in design school. No boot camp ever talks about it. It's basically the skill of being an entrepreneur, which is like how the fuck do we make money? Right. And
Right.
so you have to kind of understand those levers. And if I'm just going to boil it down into one lesson, it's like every company, every organization is probably selling a product or a service, right? And the way they make more money is they're either going to get more customers or they're going to get their existing customers to pay them more or longer. And it's very simple. And so the first thing you got to do is understand that aspect. Second is moving into, well, I forgot the last piece, which is actually the most important part. How the fuck does the design work contribute to these two goals?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right. And so once you understand that, you can actually start to become a player. And when you're a player in the organization, you're doing a lot of things. You're making friends, you're building relationships, you're building allyships. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're building street credibility for yourself. You're creating clout, right? And why the fuck do you want that? Is so people listen to you. And when they listen to you, you can actually have a voice. So this is where so many designers are like, oh, I'm not in the I don't have the seat at the table. All the decisions get made without me. And people are always like angry about it. They're like, why don't they understand the value of design? And I'm like, it's because you haven't explained it to them.
Yeah.
Like they don't understand the value of like anything, right? Like you don't just like wake up one day and be like, hey, I need new roofing. Like right? It usually happens when problems happen and then you call a professional. I'm like, oh, here's the problem and here's the reason why you want to fix it.
Something else we were talking about that you're alluding to is sales. And sales is like the most hated thing in tech
Mhm.
and in the world, but it's also the most valuable skill in the world of business. And unfortunately, you sometimes have to pitch what you're doing and like get people's attention and pitch the value of it, right? And I think that's kind of another aspect of what you're alluding to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to quote Mike Montiero, founder of Mule Design based in SF. And in his book, Design is a Job, he actually writes, if you are not selling design, don't you fucking dare call yourself a designer. And
I love that.
I absolutely fucking believe that because everything is sales. And so, like, I think at some point along the way, like designers believed that sales was a separate function. And the fact of the matter is, if you work with people, you're working in sales, and that means that you're not selling cars, right, on the like car dealer lot, but you are selling yourself. You're selling your ideas. You're selling your solutions. You're selling the buy-in to your team and why someone should be like, hey, Alex's idea is the one that we should go with instead of like my cousin saw this on TikTok and they said we shouldn't do that.
Yeah. A question though, because I think then a lot of people, a lot of designers, maybe I'm making this up, but I can picture people saying,
Mm,
it's not my job to play politics. That's my manager's job. And I talk to a lot of managers that are kind of like the shit shield, right? They're like
mm,
blocking the
mm.
politics from the team. Do you think that's the right approach, or do you think that maybe that's coddling a team that should be exposed to and be allowed to play the political game? Like there's a balance there.
So I love this question, and when I get a question like this, I love to actually just like forget about design. Like let's wipe the slate clean, and let's say we're not talking about design. Let's just say we're
Sure.
talking about being hungry, right? Alex, it's not my job to stock the fridge when I'm hungry. It's my mom's job, right? It's not my job to wipe my ass when every time I take a shit. But like, who the fuck benefits from these things, right? You see how ridiculous it sounds?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Agreed.
like when I talk about leadership and like politics, like people think that politics is this like four-letter word that they don't want to deal with. It's like a problem, right? Politics is just it's just relationship building. And if you're gonna abstain from it, like you're absolutely gonna be destined to be governed by your inferiors. And so it really kind of comes down to mindset too. Really, there's like kind of two mindsets. One, which is a growth mindset. The growth mindset is like basically looking for opportunities to be like, how can I continue to win despite the obstacles that I might have. And then having a fixed mindset where you're like, it just isn't, it's not in the cards for me. Like, it's basically giving up. It's giving up early,
Mhm.
right? So like whatever. And I just don't subscribe to that because like, no matter what the case, like you still have options. And so like, let me just pivot for 1 second. I'll talk about one of my hobbies, which is jujitsu. And jujitsu is just people grappling with each other, trying to submit each other, put them in joint locks and things like that. And even when I'm in not a dominant position where someone's controlling me and they are getting close to submitting me, like I've rolled around with a lot of my training partners and they are very close to choking me out. Like they'll like be on my back, they'll have their like both carotids like almost blocked. And even in that moment, I'm still thinking, I'm not gonna fucking make it easy for you, dude. I'm gonna keep moving my fucking chin around as much as I fucking can until the fucking bell rings. And I'm not
Yeah.
gonna just let you like kill me, right? And that's the same idea. Like you can't give up mentally. And this quote from Jocko Willink, he's a former Navy SEAL. It's amazing. I read this quote from him recently that really kind of stays with me. And what he said was, "Until death, all defeat is psychological." And that is so true, which is like if you give up mentally, you have lost. And that is it's like a mindset thing.
I agree. I mean, it's the thing that I've noticed over the past few years is it just seems like volatility in tech, where a lot of this design's done, has been compressed, right? So like it's and like news and social media has gone off the rails, but there's some truth behind it. Like the market's been like this, AI, all these advancements are like compressing it, and it's easy to, I think it's a natural human state to like panic to that, but I think so much of what you're talking about is that resilience factor and just being able to realize like, hey, this job's probably not forever, but what can I learn here? How can I grow some political skills, some design skills, so I know when I go to the next job what I like, what I don't like, and more importantly, how to prove the value, because
Right.
they're not going to see it in your Figma file or your design release, right?
Right, absolutely. Here's the crazy thing is like the thing that I think nobody's even talking about. So, Config was like 1 month ago, right? Maybe like
Yep.
2 weeks ago. The thing that nobody's actually said aloud that I've seen is that everyone at Config was not talking about Figma. They were talking about how they were using AI to vibe code solutions and how they are actively deprecating Figma as a tool.
Yeah.
And so the takeaway is that like the only thing that is certain is change. And the one thing that will be true is forever, as long as humans exist, is humans will have problems and they will need creative people to solve them. And so it really
Yep.
doesn't matter the tool. These tools just keep evolving, keep changing. And when Sketch came, it's like I used to design websites in Photoshop, right? And like this was before pixel density, right? And so I designed it in a real dumbass way. I had like two design files, like one at 2x and one at 1x. And I was like, what was I doing? And then I like multiplied it by three for every breakpoint. And I'm like, man, this is like a terrible way to work. And so when Sketch came, it was like a godsend. And we were like, holy shit, this is the meta forever, right? And then we're like, and then Figma came and it created this feature of co-creation. And
Mhm.
then we're like, man, but I still love Sketch. And so like these tools just keep changing over and
Yep.
over and over again. And like who knows if Figma will be the end all be all. Like I don't know if it will. And signs are probably not because like a lot of people are already using different tool stacks. And
Yeah.
so it's not so much even like what is the like people get so obsessed with this like identity of being like even me like back in the day I started as a graphic designer, right? Then I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm a UI designer. And then it was like, no, 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 no. UI UX designer. And then now it's like, oh, I'm a product designer. It's like, bro, they just solve human problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an aspect like 100%. The only constant is change. These tools aren't here forever. And like what you just touched on is just like being humble throughout the career. Like a lot of people are being humbled right now. Moats disappearing between product, dev, design, and it's an opportunity to go learn new skills or cling to the ego kind of thing. So I think what I'd love to like kind of finish on is how do you help designers looking for advice, and kind of where can people go to find more about what you offer?
Sure. Yeah, so I founded this place I call it Dark UX Academy. And the reason why I created Dark UX Academy is well, first of all, you can find more about it at darkuxacademy.com. But the reason why I created Dark UX Academy is because nobody talks about this hidden layer of politics, of influence. And I realized I was like, okay, I want to share this with people. But in order to actually like be useful, you actually have to understand business acumen, understand how like businesses work and what and how to speak the language of business. Because if you can't talk game, then naturally you're going to be excluded from conversations. It's something I call high and low competency triggers, which is like, if you are considered to be like a novice, you will not be invited to the comp team. And so there's these layers of basically how you present yourself and how you are perceived that absolutely map to the amount of authority, power, and control you can exert. And the reason why you want to do that is because you get access to resources, you get access to decision makers, you get access to opportunities that you would never be able to access if you were not considered competent. And so these are all levers of trust, influence, call it what you will, but like they are politics, perception. If you want to like throw in another jargon word, it's essentially how you market and present yourself.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like these are the topics that you only really hear a few beers deep at happy hour, right? Where people are like, actually, it's all politics, and this is how I keep my job, and this is how I play the game. And it's like, A, I don't drink anymore, so I'm not having those conversations. And B, why the hell aren't we talking about this? Because it is unfortunately still with AI and all the change, it's still half the job dealing with politics, dealing with egos and still managing to move the needle on the product or whatever you're designing for. So I think it's extremely refreshing to hear your perspective, James, because it is the thing that isn't really talked about. I totally agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's and like everyone's going through this like AI psychosis era right now, right? Like I just posted something on LinkedIn about this ad from DoorDash that I got, and I was like, dude, this ad doesn't even make sense. I was like, you can tell there wasn't a human involved because like
Yeah.
there's all these basic graphic design tenets that got skipped over. And so companies like some of my mentees are at these like large organizations that are very like global and they're telling me like some of the metrics that they're measured by is like AI token usage. And I was like, that is the worst metric to measure success by. That's like, I don't know, dollars spent, right? You can spend millions of dollars and get nothing
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. There's a reckoning coming for that for sure, but that's for another day. But James, yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I really appreciate the conversation.
It's been a real pleasure.